I only meant to drop off a cardboard box and drive away. That was the whole plan. Sophia had left half her stuff at my apartment after we split. Not much, just enough to keep showing up in places when I was trying not to think about her. A gray hoodie behind the laundry basket. A phone charger in the kitchen drawer. 2 paperbacks, a hair clip, one of those little ceramic bowls she used for rings but never actually put rings in. For 3 weeks, she kept saying she would come get it. Then it was, maybe Thursday. Then, can we do next week? Then nothing. So that Friday, after work, I put everything in a box, taped it shut, wrote her name across the top with a marker, and drove across town to her mother's house. I was still in my work jeans, dust on my boots, one sleeve of my shirt rolled higher than the other. I run small renovation jobs, mostly kitchens and trim work, and that day had been all drywall patches and cabinet doors that refused to hang straight. I was tired enough that the idea of seeing Sophia again felt like one more thing to carry. Not because I missed her in some dramatic way. That was the strange part. We had dated for 5 months, and when it ended, it didn't crash. It just ran out of road. No big fight. No slammed doors. No one begging in a parking lot. We just stopped trying at almost the same time. Her mother's house was on a quiet street with old maples and deep porches. I had never been there before. Sophia had talked about her mom, Brianna, like she was a calendar reminder. Mom's coming Sunday. Mom needs help with her tablet. Mom is asking about dinner. I had pictured someone nervous and overly cheerful, maybe wearing a cardigan and asking too many questions. That was not who opened the door. Brianna stood there barefoot, wearing dark jeans and a soft green shirt, her hair pulled back loose like she had done it without a mirror. She looked at me, then at the box in my hands, and didn't do the fake surprise thing people do when they already understand. "You must be Ryan," she said. "Yeah. Sorry to just show up. Sophia said she'd get this from me, but I figured I could save everybody another round of texts." Brianna glanced toward the driveway, then back at me. Her eyes were calm, steady. She ran out for errands. She should be back later. "Oh." I shifted the box against my hip. "I can just leave it with you." "You can," she said. "Or you can come in and have iced tea while you wait." I almost laughed because that sounded like a terrible idea. Not because she was strange. Because she wasn't. She stood there like she had all the time in the world, not pushing, not performing, not pretending this was less awkward than it was. I looked past her into the house. Warm kitchen light. A hallway with framed photos. The smell of something with garlic and butter coming from somewhere deeper inside. "I don't want to interrupt your evening," I said. "You already drove over here with a box," she said. "That's more effort than most people make." I looked down at the box, then back at her. "Tea sounds good." She stepped aside. The house felt lived in, but not messy. There were books on the side table, a pair of gardening gloves near the back door, a blue throw blanket folded over the couch. Nothing matched perfectly, but everything seemed like it belonged. Brianna pointed me toward the kitchen and told me to set the box by the wall. I did, and for a second I just stood there with my hands empty. That box had been sitting beside my apartment door for days. I didn't realize how much I hated seeing it until I wasn't seeing it anymore. Brianna pulled a pitcher from the fridge and filled 2 glasses with ice. "So," she said, handing one to me. "Was it as uncomfortable as people make it sound?" "What?" "Bringing your ex's things to her mother." I took the glass. "A little. At least you're honest." I considered mailing it. That would have been less brave. I don't know if driving across town counts as brave. "It depends on the ex," she said. I smiled before I could stop myself. We sat at the kitchen table. At first it was polite. Work, traffic, how long I'd been doing renovation jobs. She told me she did landscaping design on a small scale, mostly yards and patios for people who wanted things to look natural but still expected miracles by June. Then somehow we were talking for real. She asked what had happened with Sophia, but not in a nosy way. More like she had already guessed there hadn't been one clean answer. I think we were both waiting to feel more than we did. I said. Brianna nodded slowly. "That sounds familiar." "With Sophia?" "With life." She said it lightly, but not like a joke. I looked at her over the rim of my glass. "Sorry, that sounded personal." "It was. But I said it, so I can't blame you." That made me laugh again. Sophia had never talked like that. With her, everything had felt planned, even when it was supposed to be casual. Dinner had to be the right place. Weekends had to have a purpose. Even silence felt like something I was supposed to fill correctly. With Brianna, the silence just sat there until one of us had something to say. After a while, she stood and checked a pan on the stove. I made too much food, she said. That's not a trap. It's just true. I should probably get going. You should. But you're hungry, and Sophia texted that she's still across town. I checked my phone. No message from Sophia, of course. That felt about right. Brianna put a plate in front of me anyway. Chicken, rice, green beans with toasted almonds. Simple food, but better than anything I had planned, which was probably gas station coffee and whatever was in my freezer. We ate at the table like it wasn't weird. That was the weirdest part. She asked about my family. I told her my dad lived 2 states away and called mostly when his truck made a strange noise. She told me she had been on her own in the house for 8 months and still found herself making coffee for 2 some mornings. You miss him? I asked before thinking. She looked at me, not offended. I miss who I thought he was going to become, she said. That's not the same thing. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't fake it. She seemed to appreciate that. By the time headlights swept across the front windows, my plate was empty and Brianna was telling me about a client who wanted a wild cottage garden, but also didn't want bees, bugs, fallen leaves, or dirt. I was laughing when the back door opened. Sophia walked in carrying 2 grocery bags. She stopped so fast one bag bumped against her knee. Her eyes went from me to her mother, then to my plate, then back to me. Ryan. I pushed my chair back. Hey, what are you doing here? Brianna didn't rush to explain. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and said, He brought your things. You weren't home, so I invited him to wait. Sophia stared at the table. You had dinner? I made enough, Brianna said. The room changed right away. Nothing had happened. I knew that. Brianna knew that. But I could see how it looked from the doorway. Me sitting there like I belonged. Her mother relaxed across from me. The empty plate. The half-full glass. The kind of scene Sophia and I had never once managed without checking our phones. I was just leaving, I said. Sophia set the bags down too hard. How long have you been here? I glanced at the clock and hated that I had to. A little while. Brianna's voice stayed even. Long enough to eat, Sophia. Not long enough for an investigation. Sophia blinked, surprised by her tone. I stood and picked up my keys. Thanks for dinner, Brianna. You're welcome, Ryan. The way she said my name was normal. That was all. Normal and warm. Still, I felt Sophia watching us like she had heard something in it. I nodded to her. Your box is by the wall. Great, she said, though nothing about her face said great. I walked out through the front door before the air got any tighter. The porch step dipped under my boot as I left. Loose. I noticed it automatically, the way you notice crooked trim or a bad hinge. I almost turned back to mention it, then decided I had already stayed too long. Driving home, I expected to feel relieved. The box was gone. The last loose end with Sophia was handled. I could stop stepping around her old things and stop having half-finished conversations in my head. But that wasn't what stayed with me. What stayed with me was Brianna leaning against the counter, laughing under her breath. Brianna asking questions like she actually wanted the answers. Brianna sitting in that warm kitchen, calm as anything, while I felt more like myself than I had in months. By the time I pulled into my apartment lot, I had barely thought about Sophia at all. I felt more at home with Sophia's mom than I ever did with her. Am I crossing a line? Or is this just fate? Write your thoughts in the comments. I told myself I wasn't going back. That was the clean, reasonable thing. I had dropped off the box. I had survived the awkward look on Sophia's face. I had thanked Brianna for dinner, left the house, and closed the door on the whole strange evening. By Saturday morning, I was in the hardware aisle holding a metal bracket and a box of deck screws like a man who had completely lost track of his own rules. The porch step was the excuse. That was all it was supposed to be. I had felt it shift under my boot when I left Brianna's house. Not enough to send somebody through it, but enough that I kept seeing it in my head. A front step should not move like that. Especially not at night. Especially not for someone carrying groceries or a laundry basket or whatever Brianna carried in and out of that house by herself. So I bought the bracket, the screws, and 2 coffees from the place next door. The coffee was the part one could not make sound professional, even to myself. I parked in front of her house a little after 9. The street was quiet, with sprinklers ticking in a yard across the way and somebody's dog barking like it had personal problems. I sat there for a few seconds with the coffees in the cup holder and the small paper bag of hardware on the seat beside me. I almost drove off. Then Brianna opened the front door before I even got out. She stood there in old jeans and a faded navy shirt with a smear of pale paint near her wrist. Her hair was tied up, not carefully, and she had one bare foot on top of the other like she had come to the door in the middle of doing 5 things. Her eyes moved from my face to the coffees. "Good morning, Ryan." "Morning." I got out and grabbed the bag. "I noticed your porch step was loose last night." "Did you?" "I did. And you brought coffee for the step?" I looked at the tray in my hand. The step looked tired. She leaned against the doorframe, trying not to smile too much. "That was thoughtful of you. I can fix it in 15 minutes. "I believe you." That should have been the end of it, but neither of us moved. Finally, she stepped back. "Come on, then, before the step gets more tired." I set the coffees on the porch rail and crouched by the loose board. It was worse than I thought. One old screw had rusted out, and the wood underneath had started to split near the edge. Nothing dramatic, but enough to bother me. Brianna sat on the top step with her coffee, leaving me room to work. "You don't have Saturday jobs?" she asked. "I try not to, unless somebody floods a kitchen or changes their mind about tile for the 5th time. Does that happen? People change their mind about tile like it's a national sport." She laughed softly. "I understand. People do that with plants too. They ask for low maintenance, then point at the most dramatic thing in the nursery." I pulled out the old screw and glanced up. "You working today?" "I'm repainting the spare room." "Or pretending to." "What color?" "Warm white." "That's not a color. That's a surrender." She gave me a look over her cup. "Careful. I chose it myself." "Then it's brave." That was a fast recovery. I've worked with homeowners for years. The step took maybe 20 minutes because I cleaned up the split edge and added support underneath. Brianna watched without hovering. She didn't ask if I knew what I was doing. She didn't apologize every 10 seconds for needing help. She just sat there, calm and easy, like my being there made sense. That was dangerous in a quiet way. When I finished, I stood and tested the step with my weight. "Solid." "There," I said. "Now it won't try to throw anybody into the bushes." Brianna stepped down and tested it too. "Much better." I picked up my drill. "All right. I should let you get back to surrendering to warm white." She looked toward the open front door. "You already have paint on your boots from work. A little more won't ruin the look." I knew what she was doing. She knew I knew. Still, I followed her inside. The spare room was at the back of the house. It had a sheet over the floor, paint cans near the closet, and 2 walls half rolled in fresh white. There was an old dresser pushed into the center and a ladder leaning by the window. The room smelled like paint and dust and open windows. "I thought this was Sophia's old room," I said. "It was." Brianna picked up a roller. "Now it's going to be mine." "Yours how?" "I don't know yet." "Office. Plant room. Place to drink coffee where nobody asks me where the scissors are." That sounds like a real purpose. It does, doesn't it? I set down my drill near the door and took the second roller she handed me. "You trust me with this? I've seen your cabinet work. I'm taking the risk." We painted side by side for almost an hour. At first, we talked about normal things. Bad landlords. The price of lumber. Her client who wanted a backyard that looked effortless but also wanted a detailed invoice for every bag of mulch. I told her about a couple who once argued for 40 minutes about cabinet handles while I stood there holding a level. Then the conversation shifted without either of us forcing it. She was cutting paint along the window trim when she said, "Sophia looked upset last night." I kept rolling the wall. "Yeah, I'm sorry about that. You didn't do anything wrong." It still looked strange. It was strange. She dipped the brush again. But not wrong. I did not answer right away. The roller made a soft, sticky sound against the wall. "She and I were already done," I said. "Honestly, I think we were done before either of us said it." Brianna nodded. She can be very good at staying in things after she's stopped feeling them. That hit closer than I expected. "I think I can too," I said. She looked over. I kept my eyes on the wall. Work. People. Routines. I wake up, go where I'm supposed to go, answer what I'm supposed to answer, come home tired enough not to ask myself anything. Then I do it again. That sounds familiar. You said that last night. I meant it last night. She stepped back from the window and looked around the room. For a few seconds, she did not seem like she was seeing paint. She looked like she was seeing years. "I spent a long time doing what made sense," she said. "Keep the house peaceful. Don't push too hard. Don't ask for too much. Don't make things uncomfortable. It looks responsible from the outside. And from the inside, it gets very small." I stopped rolling. She gave a quick, almost embarrassed smile. Sorry. Paint makes me honest, apparently. I don't mind. I noticed. The room got quiet after that, but it was not empty quiet. It had weight. By noon, we had finished 2 coats on the main walls, and my stomach made a sound loud enough that Brianna heard it from the closet. She turned around. Was that you or the house? The house. The house wants lunch. Badly. She made sandwiches in the kitchen while I washed paint off my hands in the sink. We ate standing at the counter at first, then somehow ended up at the table again, like the house had already decided where I belonged. She sliced an apple and pushed half of it toward me. You do this a lot. I asked. What? Feed men who show up with tools? Only the ones who bring coffee. Good to know there's a standard. She smiled, but then her phone buzzed on the counter. Her face changed when she saw the screen. Not much, just a small tightening around her mouth. She didn't answer. Everything okay? I asked. Yes. She turned the phone face down. Just Grant. I knew the name. Sophia had mentioned her father, but only in short, annoyed bursts. Dad's being difficult. Dad wants paperwork. Dad says Mom is overreacting. Your ex-husband? She nodded. He has a talent for needing things on weekends. That sounds annoying. It's more polished than annoying. The way she said it told me not to push. So I didn't. That evening, I was halfway through heating up leftover pizza at my apartment when my phone buzzed. It was Brianna. I stared at her name longer than I should have before opening the message. Any chance you know how to fix a stuck garden gate? I have a client coming by tomorrow to pick up planters, and the gate has chosen drama. I typed 3 different answers and deleted all of them. Then I wrote, I can come take a look. Her reply came fast. I was hoping you'd say that. I should have taken 5 minutes. I should have changed my shirt slowly, acted casual, made it seem like I had other things going on. Instead, I was in my truck within 3. The backyard gate was swollen from humidity and dragging hard at the bottom. Easy fix. Plane the edge, adjust the hinge, tighten the latch. Brianna held a flashlight while I worked because the sun was dropping behind the fence. She had changed into a loose gray sweater, and she smelled faintly like soap and basil from the planters lined along the patio. These are for a client? I asked. Some. The rest are experiments. You experiment with plants? Better than experimenting with people. I looked back at her. She met my eyes, then looked away first. That came out sharper than I meant. No, it didn't. She smiled a little. No, it didn't. After the gate swung clean, I helped her move the planters into groups. Tall grasses in the back, trailing vines over the front, herbs together near the small table. She had an eye for it. I could see that right away. Everything looked casual until you noticed how carefully it had been placed. When we finished, she brought out 2 glasses of water, and we sat on the back porch. No dinner this time. No Sophia walking in. No box by the wall. Just the 2 of us and the sound of the neighbor's wind chimes. Brianna turned her glass between her hands. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why do you always say you're fine before anyone asks? I laughed once, but it came out thin. Do I? Yes. I looked out at the yard. The gate stood straight now, the latch catching clean. Probably because it's easier than giving the real answer. What's the real answer? I could have made a joke. I almost did. Instead I said, I'm not really fine, but I feel better when I'm here. Brianna did not move. For a second, I thought I had ruined it. I had said the thing too directly, too early, too honestly. The air between us changed, and I could hear my own pulse in my ears. Then she looked down at her glass and said, I feel better when you're here too. Neither of us smiled. That made it feel more serious. A car door closed out front. Brianna's shoulders tightened before I even heard the gate at the side of the house. A man's voice called, Brianna? She stood up slowly. I turned as a tall man in a pressed shirt stepped into the backyard like he had never needed permission to enter it. His eyes landed on me, then on Brianna, then on the 2 glasses between us. And just like that, the whole yard felt smaller. Gary stepped into the backyard like he still owned the place. That was my first thought. Not because he was loud. He wasn't. He was actually the opposite. Clean shirt, nice shoes, calm face, silver watch catching the porch light. He looked like the kind of man who never had to raise his voice because people had already learned what came after it. Brianna stood beside her chair, one hand still wrapped around her glass. Grant, she said. You should have called. I was nearby. He said it like that explained everything. His eyes moved across the porch. The 2 glasses. My tool bag by the gate. The planters lined up near the patio. Then me. And who's this? I stood because sitting suddenly felt wrong. Ryan Cole. Gary waited half a second, like the name should do more work for him. Brianna said, Ryan fixed the gate. Did he? Grant smiled, but nothing warmed up. That gate has worked for 15 years. It stopped working today, she said. Convenient. The word landed quietly, but it landed. I could feel Brianna's whole body go still. Not scared, more like braced. Like she knew this rhythm too well and hated that she still recognized every beat. Gary stepped farther into the yard. Sophia mentioned Orion. I said, probably me. The ex-boyfriend. That's right. His eyebrows lifted, almost amused. And now you're repairing things for her mother. Brianna's voice sharpened a little. Grant. What? I'm just catching up. He looked at me again, sizing me up in that careful way men do when they're trying to decide if they can embarrass you without getting their hands dirty. I could have said something clever. I could have puffed up, asked him what his problem was, made the whole thing worse. Instead, I said, the hinge was loose and the bottom was dragging. It's fixed now. Gary stared at me. I stared back, not hard, not trying to win anything, just not leaving. That seemed to bother him more than if I had argued. After a few seconds, he turned to Brianna. I need to talk about the house paperwork. Then email me. I did. Then I'll answer when I've read it. It concerns the account too. I said I'll answer when I've read it. He let out a small breath through his nose, like she was being difficult in front of company. Brianna, we can handle a 5-minute conversation like adults. We could have, she said. If you had called before walking into my yard. My yard. I noticed that. Grant did too. His face barely changed, but something in his jaw tightened. Then he gave me one more look. Well, I won't interrupt the repairman. He made repairman sound like a costume I had put on to sneak into the house. I picked up my glass from the porch rail and took a drink, slow enough that it answered him without being an answer. Gary's eyes narrowed. Brianna said, good night, Grant. For a second, I thought he might keep going. He looked at the back door, then the plants, then Brianna, like he was checking inventory. But finally, he turned and walked back down the side path. The gate clicked shut behind him. Neither of us spoke until his car started out front. Brianna sat down carefully, like her legs had only just remembered they were tired. He does that, she said. Shows up, knows exactly where to stand. Says something small enough that if I react, I look dramatic. I sat back down, but not too close. Does it still work? She looked toward the side gate. For a while, I thought she wasn't going to answer. Less than it used to, she said. That felt like something important, even though it was said quietly. I didn't stay much longer. Not because I wanted to leave, but because the night had turned heavy, and I didn't want to become one more person taking up space in her house. At the door, she thanked me for the gate. I told her she didn't have to. She said, I know. Then, just before I stepped off the porch, she added, Ryan? I turned. Would you come to dinner Saturday? I looked at the step under my boot, the one I had fixed that morning. Is something broken? No. She held my eyes. That was the whole answer. Saturday took forever to arrive. I worked 2 jobs that week and barely remembered either one. I measured wrong on a trim piece, forgot my lunch in the truck, and caught myself checking my phone like a teenager. Brianna texted once, just to say she had sent Grant's emails to her lawyer instead of answering them directly. I wrote back, good. Then I stared at that one word like an idiot, wondering if it sounded too cold or too proud or too much like I belonged in her business. She sent back, it felt good. That made me smile in the middle of a hardware store. On Saturday evening, I changed shirts 3 times. I hated myself for that, but I did it anyway. I ended up in a dark button-down I usually save for weddings and dinners where somebody else paid. I bought a bottle of wine, stood in the aisle for too long, and finally picked one because the label looked simple and I trusted simple. When Brianna opened the door, I forgot whatever normal greeting I had planned. She wore a black dress, nothing flashy, just clean lines and soft fabric. Her hair was down. There was music playing somewhere behind her, low and easy, and the house smelled like rosemary and roasted potatoes. She saw the wine in my hand. You didn't have to bring anything. I know. I panicked in a grocery store. That made her laugh, and just like that, I could breathe again. The table was set. Real plates, cloth napkins, 2 candles she had clearly debated lighting and then decided to light anyway. There was no toolbox by the door. No paint tray. No stuck gate. No practical reason for me to be there. That made everything feel clearer. During dinner, We were careful at first. Too careful. We talked about my week, her clients, a woman who wanted lavender but hated the color purple. We both smiled too much and reached for our glasses whenever the silence got close. Then Brianna put down her fork. I don't want to pretend this is a normal dinner, she said. My chest tightened. Okay. I invited you because I wanted you here. I looked at her across the table. I came because I wanted to be here. She nodded once, like she had needed to hear the words plainly. After that, the conversation changed. She told me more about Grant. Not a long speech, not a list of every bad year. Just pieces. How he made decisions and called them practical. How he corrected her in front of people with a smile. How she got used to asking herself whether something was worth the reaction before she ever asked whether she wanted it. I became smaller, she said, looking at the candle flame instead of me. Not all at once. That's the trick. It happens in tiny ways, so tiny you can defend each one. I leaned back in my chair. And now I don't always know what size I'm supposed to be. You don't have to know tonight. She looked up. I meant it. I wasn't trying to sound deep. I just couldn't stand the idea of her measuring herself for someone else's comfort while sitting in her own kitchen. She smiled faintly. You make things sound easier than they are. No, I just know complicated doesn't always mean wrong. That hung between us. After dinner, we carried the dishes to the sink together. Our shoulders brushed once. Neither of us moved away fast enough. The music kept playing from the living room, and the candles had burned low on the table. Brianna turned off the kitchen light and said, "Come outside for a minute." We stood on the back porch. The yard was dark except for the small lights along the path and the glow from the kitchen window behind us. The planters we had arranged earlier in the week looked settled now, like they had always been there. She folded her arms, then dropped them, restless for the first time since I had known her. I haven't let myself want anything in a long time, she said. Wanting things made life complicated. What do you want now? She looked at me then. No joke, no cover. I'm tired of safe. I stepped closer, slowly enough that she could stop me. She didn't. When I kissed her, it was gentle at first, almost careful. But then her hand came to my shirt, and the caution between us broke in one quiet breath. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't some reckless thing that had no name. It felt like something we had both been walking toward while pretending we were only fixing steps and painting walls. When we pulled apart, she stayed close. Sophia will have thoughts, she said. Yeah. Grant will have more. Let them. She gave me a look, half warning, half hope. You say that now. I'll say it later too. We sat on the porch after that, side by side, her hand resting near mine until our fingers finally touched. Neither of us pretended anymore. The gate was fixed. The step was solid. The paint was dry. I had no excuse left. And I didn't want one. Sophia found out on a Tuesday. Not from me. Not from Brianna. Not from some big confession at a family dinner. She figured it out the way people usually figure things out, from small pieces that didn't sit right. My truck was in the driveway when she drove by after work. That was all it took. I was in Brianna's kitchen, drawing a plate while she packed leftovers into a glass container, when the front door opened without a knock. Brianna froze for half a second. I heard Sophia's keys hit the small table in the hallway. Mom. Brianna put the lid on the container. In the kitchen. Sophia walked in, still in her work clothes, hair pulled back tight, face already set like she had been arguing with us in her head the whole drive over. Then she saw me with a dish towel in my hand. Her eyes moved to the sink, the two plates, Brianna's bare feet, my sleeves rolled up. Oh, she said. Wow. I set the plate down. Sophia. She didn't answer me. She looked at her mother. So it's true. Brianna closed the container slowly. What's true? Don't do that. Sophia's voice cracked just enough to show there was real hurt under the anger. Don't stand there and act like I'm being dramatic. I'm not acting like anything. He's been coming here? I looked at Brianna, then back at Sophia. I should go. No, Sophia said quickly. Actually stay? Since apparently everyone is comfortable now. Brianna's voice stayed calm, but I could hear the steel under it. You don't get to walk into my house and start giving orders. Sophia stared at her like she had never heard that tone before. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. This was strange. I knew that. Nobody wants to picture their ex standing in their mother's kitchen like he belongs there. Even if the breakup was already cold, even if neither person wanted the other back, there were still lines people expected to stay untouched. And we had touched one. Sophia pointed at me, but kept looking at Brianna. He was my boyfriend. For 5 months, Brianna said. And that was over before anything happened here. That makes it fine? No. It makes it honest. Sophia laughed once, sharp and empty. Honest. Mom, this is embarrassing. That word changed the room. Brianna's face didn't harden. It did the opposite. It became very still. Embarrassing for who? She asked. Sophia opened her mouth, then closed it. For you, Brianna continued. Because people might think something? Because I'm supposed to stay inside whatever version of me makes you comfortable? That's not what I'm saying. It is close. Sophia's eyes turned wet, and she looked younger than she was. You're my mother. I know that. Then how could you do this? Brianna took a breath. She didn't rush. She didn't apologize just to make the moment softer. Being your mother is the most important part of my life, she said. But it is not the only part. I am still a woman, Sophia. I still get lonely. I still get to want dinner with someone who listens to me. I still get to decide who sits at my table. Sophia looked at me then, finally. And you? What? You just moved from me to her. No, I said. It was never like that. Then what was it like? I could have tried to explain every step. The box, the iced tea, the porch step, the room we painted, the gate, the dinner. But it would have sounded like excuses lined up in order. So I said the only thing that mattered. You and I were done, Sophia. I didn't leave you for your mother. And she didn't take me from you. Her mouth tightened. Brianna stepped closer, not touching her, but softer now. I understand that this feels strange. I do. You can be upset. You can need time. But I'm not going to stand here and pretend I did something dirty just because my life surprised you. Sophia wiped under one eye fast, angry that it happened. I can't deal with this right now, she said. I know. She grabbed her keys from the hallway table. At the door, she stopped and looked back at Brianna. I don't know who you are lately. Brianna's voice was quiet. I think I'm finding out. Sophia left, and the door shut harder than it needed to. For a minute, neither of us moved. Then Brianna pressed both hands against the edge of the counter and looked down. I wanted to go to her. I also knew this was not a moment for me to step in like I could make it all better. She'll hate me for a while, Brianna said. She doesn't hate you. She might. Maybe for a little while, I said. But not forever. Brianna nodded, but her eyes stayed on the counter. Her phone started buzzing. She looked at the screen and let out a tired laugh with no humor in it. Grant, she said. Of course. It buzzed again. Then again. I saw the old habit move through her face. The urge to answer before things got worse. To manage his mood. To keep him from showing up, from twisting silence into some new problem. But this time she didn't pick up. She opened her email instead, found the latest message from him about the shared account and house paperwork, and forwarded it to her lawyer with 2 lines. Please handle this directly. I do not want personal calls about it anymore. Then she blocked his number. Not dramatically. No speech. No shaking hands. Just her thumb on the screen, one clean choice after another. When she set the phone down, the kitchen felt different. I said, you okay? No. She looked at me. But I'm not going to answer the door every time my old life knocks. That was the moment I understood her victory wasn't going to look like a movie. No big showdown. No perfect sentence that fixed every year behind her. It was going to look like this. A woman in her kitchen deciding that a ringing phone did not own her. The next few weeks were not easy. Sophia didn't come around at first. She sent short texts to Brianna about normal things, but nothing warm. Then one Sunday, she stopped by for 10 minutes and stayed 20. I wasn't there. Brianna told me later that Sophia had stood in the repainted spare room and said, "It looks nice." Like the words had cost her $5 each. That was something. Gary tried email, then messages through Sophia, then one more unannounced visit. Brianna didn't open the door. She watched from the living room window while he stood on the porch with his polished frustration. Then she called her lawyer and let the porch camera record him leaving. After that, he stopped showing up. Or maybe he just finally understood the house was not his shortcut back into her head. Sophia didn't suddenly love the idea of us. I don't think she ever fully would. But she cooled down. She saw Brianna laugh more. Saw the spare room turn into a real workspace with fabric samples, plant sketches, and coffee rings on the desk. Saw that I wasn't there to make her mother look foolish. One evening, Brianna told me Sophia had said, "You seem different." Brianna had asked, "Different bad?" Sophia had shrugged. Different settled. That stayed with her all night. By then, I didn't come over with tools every time. I still fixed things when they needed fixing because that was who I was, but the excuses were gone. Sometimes I came over with groceries. Sometimes just myself. One ordinary Thursday, I stood in Brianna's kitchen making grilled cheese while she stirred tomato soup from a pot and argued with me about the right amount of butter. "You're burning it," she said. "I'm not burning it. I'm adding character. It's smoking. That's confidence." She laughed, bumped me lightly with her hip, and reached around to turn down the burner. I caught her hand for a second before she pulled away, and she gave me that look that still made me forget what I was doing. The sandwich burned on one side. She lifted it with the spatula and raised her eyebrows. "Character? Too much character." She laughed harder then, the kind of laugh that filled the room without asking permission. Outside, the porch light glowed steady over the front steps. The one I had fixed was solid under every foot that crossed it. The garden gate latched clean. The spare room window was open a few inches, letting in the evening air. No toolbox sat by the door. No cardboard box waited by the wall. Brianna looked at me across the stove, smiling like she knew exactly what I was thinking. "You know," she said, "you don't have to fix anything tonight." I turned the second sandwich before it could burn. "I know," I said. "That's why I came."